Okay. That was annoying. Hey friends, my name is Jackson, and welcome back to my channel, Gender Not Found. And I'm going to read a chapter of A Guardian Angel. And so, um, give me a second. No, oh, okay, it's loading. Here we go. Chapter 99, Blue Moon. Slowly, Fiona opened her eyes, looking around the room. Every time she had opened her eyes last night, her mother had been there, sitting on the bed stroking her hair. Now, though, as she looked around, Fiona was hard-pressed to believe her mom had been here at all. Laying in the bed, listening to Ori's soft breaths, Fiona smiled. It had been a wonderful dream, though. Pushing herself up, Fiona stretched, watching as her hair fell over her shoulder, the braid catching her attention. I don't remember doing that. The ping of her cell phone caught Fiona's attention, and reaching over, she pulled it from the side table, looking at the screen in shock. Notifications 19, missed calls 5, voicemail 3, text messages 11. Quickly, Fiona scrolled through the texts. Some were from Billy, but the rest were from Marshall. She checked the call log and was surprised. She'd missed his calls. How had this happened? Fiona dialed voicemail and listened to the messages. From Marshall. As each one passed, he became increasingly more concerned. Hey, Fiona, it's Wednesday and close to 5 now. I'm calling to check in on you and the baby. Are you guys okay? I'm sorry I forgot to check in last night and this morning. Things have gotten a bit hectic, but it's nothing we can't handle. I'll call back in a little bit if I don't hear from you first. There's a bit I want to fill you in on. Everybody's okay and we all miss you. I love you and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Beep. Fiona, is everything okay? I haven't heard from you at all today, and I'm starting to get worried. Please call me back when you get this. I want to hear your voice, and I'd love to talk to Ori. Call me, I love you. Beep! Fiona, please, please call me back. I just left a message for Billy. Please talk to me, Fiona. I know you're not okay. I talked to your mom. Call me back. Please call me back. Beep! Fiona, Billy called me. He told me what's going on. I'm gonna be done soon, Fee, I promise. I love you so much, Fiona. You're always so strong, Fee. It's gonna be okay, I promise. Please call me back when you get this. Beep! The last voicemail had been from 2 in the morning. Hey, Fee, I've been going back and forth with Billy and Ellen. They've been keeping me in the loop about what's going on. I'm glad your mom's able to stay. I'm glad she's there to take care of you and Ari, especially when I can't. I love you so much, Fiona. Call me when you can. I love you. Her mom was here. Dropping the phone, Fiona carefully climbed from the bed to avoid waking Arya and walked from the room. The living room was empty, but the familiar smell of home was present. She made her way into the kitchen and spotted the back door propped open. You're going to wear yourself out before either of those two even get up, Ellen, Billy said with a laugh. You've already cleaned the place from top to bottom. Billy, it'll be fine. It's laundry. Besides, my babies deserve to wake up to some fresh, clean clothes, and when they're up, I'll wash those sheets, too. Fiona stood in the doorway, looking back and forth from Billy to her mother. Neither of them had noticed her yet. She couldn't believe her mom was actually here. Billy had been so adamant that it was just she and Marshall in the house, that the more people who knew where they were, the more dangerous the situation could become. Fiona knew she wasn't doing well. She just wanted her mom, and from the looks of it, Billy brought her. Before she'd even registered the feeling of grass on her feet, the feel of the grass on her feet, Fiona was walking over towards them. Ellen glanced towards her, and seeing the blonde, she smiled. Turning away from Billy, Ellen reached out the moment she arrived, pulling her into a tight hug as Fiona dissolved into tears, squeezing her tightly back. Sharing a look, Billy nodded, heading off towards the river as Ellen tended to her daughter. Oh, my baby! They stood holding each other, Fiona crying and not wanting to let go, and Ellen, who refused to let go until Fiona did. It felt so good being in her mother's arms. She felt more stable and grounded than she had in weeks. Fiona hated to admit it, but crying it out had definitely helped some. I missed you guys so much, Fiona said in a watery voice. Dad must be having a conniption with Billy stealing you away like this. Hearing this, Ellen couldn't help but laugh. Honey, I wish you could have seen it. It was truly one of the funniest things I think I'd ever seen, Ellen said as Fiona pulled back, slowly releasing her grip, but keeping hold of her mother's hand. Together they turned back into the house. Turning, they headed back into the house, the clothes on the line flapping in the breeze. I made apple cinnamon oatmeal, Sit, I'll get you a bowl. She said, watching as Fiona gave a quick glance into the bedroom before taking her place at the table. Moments later, her mom placed before her a steaming mug of tea and her bowl of oatmeal. I expect you to eat that whole bowl, sweetie. It doesn't look like you've eaten it all in the last month, she said, gently placing a hand on Fiona's cheek before kissing the top of her head. I just haven't been hungry. Her stomach immediately betrayed her as it let out a growling whine, and from across the room Ellen raised an eyebrow. Sweetie, I'll spoon feed you again. You're never going to get too old for me to be your mother, Ellen said, watching as Fiona lifted the spoon from the bowl, bringing it to her mouth. Fiona closed her eyes, savoring the flavor of her mom's cooking, and smiled. Thank you, Fiona whispered, watching as her mother looked towards her. Thank you for everything. I'm your mom. I'll always be here for you, sweetie. After breakfast, Fiona walked back to the bedroom, her mind now on Marshall and all of those missed messages, and mostly the conversation she just had with her mom. She needed to call Marshall. Dialing the phone, Fiona listened as it rang. She thought it was going to go to voicemail, but the line finally picked up on the fourth ring. Fiona? He sounded so tired. Immediately, Fiona felt a pang of guilt for waking him. Hi, Marsh, she said softly. I'm sorry I missed your calls. What's going on, Fee? He said gently, sounding more awake now. Please talk to me. Marshall, I feel so alone and Now Fiona took a breath, looking towards their daughter. Marshall, I'm scared. I thought I'd be able to channel this fear into anger, but Marsh, I can't. It just makes me feel vulnerable and scared. I'm worried too. I'm worried about Blood Rain, and I'm worried about the band. I'm worried about our friends and family. I'm worried about Arya. I worry about you. Now Fiona closed her eyes, feeling as the tears burned them. I'm scared that I'm going to do something wrong. All I can hear on repeat in my head is Lich. Babies have accidents every day, is what he said, she said, wiping her eyes and resting her hand on Ari's stomach, feeling her breathe. All I keep thinking is, what am I doing that could hurt her? I'm terrified and I can't get that out of my head, she said, taking a shuddering breath. Fiona, you're a wonderful mother. Words are kind of failing me right now, I can't lie. But Fiona, I swear, every time we talk and you and Ari come up, all everyone has to say is how great of a mom you are, Fee. They can't wait to see you guys. I miss everyone. I hate being here, Marshall. I feel so powerless and alone here. I have no contact with family or friends, and I feel so isolated. I mean, I know that I know Billy, but I don't know Billy Marsh. For you, it's like hanging out with your favorite uncle. For me, it would be like if I sent you to stay with Jake's brother, Jermaine, or Lady's parents. You know you're safe, and you know they'll take care of you, but I don't know. I'm probably not making sense. Fiona, I get it. You know him, but you don't know him like I do. I can understand that, Fee. Marshall's voice was so comforting. With a small smile, Fiona closed her eyes. I knew you would. Mom's really here, she said with a smile. I know, we talked a lot yesterday. She's staying with us until we go home. I know, I thought last night had been a dream. Honestly, I barely remember any of it. How have you been doing? He asked, and Fiona understood the question under the question. It's been getting worse, she sniffed, but I think having Mom here will help make it better. What time is your appointment with Simone? Did your mom tell you? Marshall asked. I have an appointment with Simone? Yeah, I talked to her about getting those set up for you. You thrive off of consistency consistency and stability, Fiona. I want to help get some sort of stability back in our lives. I want you to be okay for yourself, for Ari, and for me, which I know is entirely selfish. I want you back, Fiona. I want to see you smile and laugh and light up. Right now, we just have to work on getting you out of your head, Marshall said, his voice soothing her building anxiety. Thank you. I'm glad you called Mom. Honestly, I didn't. I didn't call to see if she could come down. Billy must have done that. Fiona, I didn't know that you were like this. I'd have never left you if I knew you'd get this bad. I'm so sorry. I should have known better. I should have planned better. I didn't want to see you scared anymore. I never meant for this to happen. He sounded so heartbroken. Marsh, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. Mom and I were talking at breakfast, and I think. Now Fiona swallowed thickly. I think you're right. The confusion in his voice was evident when Marshall spoke. Right about what, Fee? Mom said that you thought I might have postpartum depression, and I think you're right. Marceline and Ignitus. Marceline woke feeling warm and toasty. With how warm she was, and with her recollection of last night, Marceline knew she had to be still zipped inside of Ignitus's hoodie with him. Turning her head, she cracked an eye open, and seeing the pink tinge of the sky, Marceline knew it was early in the morning. As tempted as she was to curl back into his chest, Marceline could feel Ignitus shivering against her. Whether it was from cold or from another nightmare, Marcy wasn't sure. The nightmares, she noticed, though, were getting more frequent. Reaching up, her hand coming to rest on his cheek, she watched as he flinched. His eyes opened with a gasp, and startled, Marceline jumped, pulling back through the hood, though the hoodie wouldn't let her. Smack! Moments later, they both were holding their heads and wincing. Marcy, I love you, but morning headbutts are the worst. Iggy, I'm so sorry. Her apology was cut short as his lips captured hers, and closing her eyes, Marceline gave in to it, kissing him back, though moments later he pulled away. I could kiss you all day, and I damn sure want to, but how about we get warm first? He asked, pulling his keys from his pocket, pressing them into her hands. I'm gonna leave you in the hoodie and wrap you up like a burrito with a blanket. You get in the truck and turn the heat on hell while I pack everything up back here, he said, pulling his arms from the sleeves. As he worked his way down and free from the hoodie, Marceline gasped and squirmed, feeling the heat of his lips against her stomach as he did. Finally he was free, and Marceline couldn't help but stare as the steam poured off of him. The nickname Flame Prince didn't seem so silly now. She watched the smoky waves waft from him in the cold morning air as he wrapped the blanket snugly around her. Helping her down from the bed of the truck, Ignitus swatted her butt, listening as she giggled, as Marceline hurried towards the passenger side door. Scoot, skedaddle, scram, adios, later, Gator, now get in the truck, it's cold. He smirked, watching as she climbed in, he shutting the door behind her. Walking to the back, he listened as the truck started and began deflating the air mattress, rolling the air out and folding it as best as he could. He was freezing, and honestly, Ignitus was surprised they'd fallen asleep outside. The last thing he remembered was zipping Marceline into his hoodie with him because she'd been cold. Once everything was away, he climbed into the truck, reveling in the warmth, blasting from the heater as he rubbed his hands and arms. Marceline fidgeted under the blanket, and moments later his hoodie was tossed at him, Marceline pulling the blanket closer as she too now trembled from the cold. She watched as he shouldered it on, quickly zipping it up, but turning to Marceline, he grinned. You know, I like this way better on you, he said, watching as her face tinged pink. Turning, he focused on the road behind them as he backed them out of the field. Stopping on the way home, Ignitus grabbed them breakfast. Handing Marceline their bag of breakfast sandwiches and her tea, he took off down the street. Opening the bag, Marceline pulled one out and partially unwrapped it before handing it to Ignitus, who took it with a smile. Grabbing hers, Marceline took a bite, returning his smile with one of her own. The ride home was peaceful and quiet. Mm. The The ride home was peaceful and quiet, as they entered the apartment, Ignitus paused, stopping Marceline from going any further. Hold up, he said quietly, looking around the apartment as he entered it. Something didn't feel right. Oh, shit. The apartment was empty, and taking comfort in that, he allowed Marceline to enter. What he didn't say was how he was sure the apartment smelled weird, like somebody had been in it. He stood looking around the living room, staring at the photo frame on the wall. What was off about it? Do you smell menthol cigarettes, Ig? Marceline asked, now entering the living room. Immediately he felt a chill. She smelled it too. Turning, he made eye contact with her, bringing his finger to his lips. Yeah, Emma, he said, sounding nonchalant. It's probably the neighbor. I smell it all the time, he said, walking over to the picture frame. The photo frame was at a slight angle, and lifting it lightly from the wall, he flipped it over and stared at the small black recording bug that was now attached to the back of the frame. Oh, shit. Turning, he looked at Marceline, who was staring at him, and showed her the back of the frame, watching as her mouth dropped open in shock. Just wait in the kitchen, Em. I won't be long, Ignitus said as he began going through the small apartment with a fine-tooth comb. He found 3 more bugs, and in that time the only consistent thought was that they needed to move again. He worked his way into the bedroom and had been in there for the last 15 minutes when he finally noticed the envelope laying on the dresser. Son of a bitch. Gritting his teeth, Ignitus reached for it, his finger sliding the envelope open. Inside was a card with an exploding champagne bottle on it that said congratulations on the front, and reading it, he felt his heart sink. Congratulations to the newlyweds, Mr. and Mrs. Flint. We look forward to Marceline joining our family. Anderson Litch. Damn it. Totally should have read that in Lynch's voice, but oh well. Closing his eyes, Ignitus knew one thing for certain. They would be moving before this week was out, and considering the fact that it was Thursday now, he was on a time crunch. Taking the card with him, Ignitus walked from the room, grabbing a pen and one of his songbooks as he did. Flipping to the back, he began writing, placing them both down in front of Marceline. He watched as she read the card and visibly paled. The speed in which she looked to him told him everything he needed to know. She was scared. Ignitus would never say it out loud, but he was too. Now she looked to the notebook. We need to move ASAP. Looking up at him, Marceline nodded in agreement before taking the pen and responding. Agreed. I'm gonna call Daddy. We can stay there until we find a place. We can stay in my old room if we have to. She wrote back, turning the book towards him and passing it over. Reading it, he nodded. He didn't want to have to depend on her father for something like this. But he knew this time he'd have to swallow his pride. Let's call him now. The sooner the better. These guys move fast, he wrote, handing her the notepad before walking into the bedroom. Grabbing his duffel bag, Ignitus began loading it with clothes from his side of the dresser. Marceline, he knew, had clothes at her father's house. They were always over there most weekends for some reason or another, because Marceline loved her dad. Sunday dinner was usually had with Hudson, he and Marceline, and Simon, her grandpa. Ignitus wondered what family dinner would look like with his family there, too. This was going to be their first holiday season together. The thought made him pause. It was only early August. It would be 3 months until Thanksgiving. He was sure if he asked, Mrs. Wright could teach him how to cook a turkey. Oh, hell yes, Fiona's mom would be the best choice. Unless Marceline knew. Did she know? It would be really nice to make Thanksgiving dinner together. Maybe he could find it on the internet. Ember could also teach him how to cook a turkey. She did it every year with their mom. He was supposed to make one with Nana. Shaking his head, he focused on his original train of thought and began pulling out pajamas and grabbing underclothes. With his things packed, he dropped the bag onto the couch, watching as Marceline returned from the fire escape. With a nod, they walked from the apartment, locking the door behind them. Fiona hadn't remembered asking, but she was more than appreciative of Billy running to the store for her, especially when she found the breast pump and the liners for her bra hanging in a bag on her bedroom door. She'd been reading the instructions in a dry clean shirt and a freshly lined bra when Ellen walked in, Aria on her hip. So, I know it's a personal choice, Fiona, but why did you stop breastfeeding? You were so adamant about that, Ellen asked, watching as Fiona looked away embarrassed. I couldn't sleep, so Billy gave me, well, pot. Okay, so you're not breastfeeding until you know it's out of your system? She asked, watching as Fiona nodded. Fiona was relieved. She didn't imagine her mom would be so calm hearing that, especially with how wildly she always reacted when Finn and Jake did something like this. First of all, sons and daughters are totally different, and second of all, you're going through postpartum depression, so of course she's going to be more sensitive. Yeah, I looked it up, and it said waiting a week was the best bet, she said, connecting the tubes as the instructions indicated. I think this is done, Fiona said, watching as Arya reached for her. Taking her, Fiona watched as Arya's face nuzzled into her chest and felt a pang of sadness, listening to her daughter's whimper as she began to fuss. Oh, love, I know you're hungry. I'm so sorry, Fiona said, feeling the wave of guilt. Almost as if by magic, her mother returned, handing Fiona a warm bottle. She hadn't even seen her leave. Ellen watched as Fiona tried feeding Arya, the baby fighting the bottle during every moment. Honey, I can do it, Fiona said, feeling as overwhelmed as she knew she sounded. Fiona, sweetie, just think for a minute. Your body makes food designed for Arya from nutrients, probably down to flavor depending on what you eat. She knows the best milk comes from Mommy, and she knows this is different milk. She'll fight it for a minute, but she will eat, Ellen said, sitting next to Fiona, rubbing her back as soothingly as she could. Arya's cries getting louder. I just feel like a horrible, selfish person. I traded I traded a week's worth of food for my baby for a single night's sleep, Fiona said, wiping her eyes, now setting the bottle aside. Fiona, you needed to do what you had to take care of yourself. That doesn't make you a selfish mother. You needed sleep. And Ari needs to eat. Honey, your needs being met are just as important as Ari's needs being met. You can't take care of her properly if you don't take care of yourself. Please don't be so hard on yourself, she said, accepting the baby from Fiona, who now passed her the bottle. I feel like she hates me, she whispered, watching as Aria took the bottle from Ellen with no fuss. She doesn't hate you, sweetie. It's basically a shakedown. She knows you have the goods, but how is she going to get it? Ellen asked, making Fiona laugh as she wiped her eyes, now looking back at the instructions next to her. Want me to give you some time alone with that? She asked, motioning to the pump as Fiona nodded. Yes, please. Ellen smiled, walking from the room. As she walked through the cabin, she took the time to look at the photos on the wall. There were dozens of them. Some showed concerts, others showed Billy with various motorcycles and various people. Ellen paused, seeing a familiar face in one of the photos. She recognized Hannah immediately, and she was arm in arm with another familiar face, one she'd only seen through a son. Seeing a photo of Hannah and her Marshall was a heartwarming sight to see. She wondered if Hannah knew this picture was here. Continuing on, Ellen recognized several familiar faces as they showed up repeatedly at concerts, bars, and parties. It was then Ellen realized that this entire section of wall seemed to be dedicated to the Scream Kings. It was the same several faces over and over again. Steve, she knew, would have known who they were. Mom, I feel like a cow being milked. Hearing this, Ellen couldn't help but have to stifle her laugh before returning to the room. I suppose that could be a downside to using a pump, she said with a smile. Is it helping the soreness? With a smile, Fiona nodded. Yeah, the milk bag is already halfway full, Fiona said, massaging her chest, watching as Ellen burped Ari. I guess they were as swollen as they felt. Would you like lunch, sweetie? I was going to make grilled cheese and tomato soup. That would be awesome with tomato in it, Fiona said, the thought making her mouth water. I can do that, Ellen said with a smile, laying Arya on her stomach on the bed with Fiona before walking from the room. Fiona watched as Arya reached curiously for everything she seemed to possess. Each time Fiona took something away, she chided Arya with a gentle, No, thank you. She could smell her mom cooking in the kitchen and smiled. In no time, Ellen returned, handing Fiona a mug of soup and a small plate with a grilled cheese and tomato sandwich. It was cut diagonally in half and therefore filled to the brim with love. Oh. Fiona set it aside for a moment as she powered down the machine, putting her pump milk on the side table as she began disassembling the pump. Spotting movement, Fiona glanced up, staring in shock as her mom entered the room. Sweetie, do you want me to? Ellen's mouth dropped open as she looked from Fiona to Arya, who was unsteadily moving towards Fiona's sandwich. She's crawling! Mom, Ari's crawling! Fiona said, watching as her daughter triumphantly grabbed the corner of her sandwich with an elated giggle. Immediately, Fiona lifted the child into her arms, Aria kicking her legs happily. Look at you crawling, my big girl! Fiona said with a laugh, hugging her before sitting her down in her lap, taking the sandwich from Ari before she could bite it. Fiona pinched off a piece, popping it into her waiting mouth. I cannot believe I walked in on time to see that, Ellen gushed. I'm just sad Marshall missed it, Fiona said quietly, taking a bite and pinching off another piece for Ari, this time dunking a bit in the soup. Blowing on it, despite the reaching of little hands, Fiona outmaneuvered her once again, feeling as her daughter happily ate the piece from between her fingers. Can you grab a jar of the chicken and rice? Fiona asked, watching as her mom nodded, returning with the jar of baby food and a spoon, quickly taking over the job of feeding Arya lunch. Fiona smiled as she enjoyed her still warm meal. They had been talking, enjoying their time spent together when the phone started to ring. Reaching over, Fiona grabbed it. Climbing from the bed, she walked to the window, taking a sip of her soup before answering the phone. Hey, what's up? The blonde said, waiting for the reply. Ari was babbling away, but since it was either going to be Billy or Marshall, she didn't mind, because she knew they wouldn't. Outside of her mom now, they were the only people who had this number. Fiona listened to the silence before looking curiously at the phone in her hand. She didn't recognize this number. Suddenly the screen went dark as the line disconnected. The spike of anxiety she felt had been immense, and it completely washed over her. Um, What if that was Lich or his people? What if they were tracing the call? Now Fiona felt nauseous as her stomach lurched, the mug trembling in her hand. This was why she hadn't been eating. Closing her eyes, Fiona took slow, deep breaths, the sound of the phone ringing in her hand, snapping her back to reality and sending her anxiety through the roof. Fiona was acutely aware of the fact that her mom was watching her now. Answering the phone, she brought it to her ear. Hello? Her voice, Fiona was relieved to hear, was steady, much steadier than she had imagined it would be. Again the line went dead. Almost immediately it began ringing again, and answering it, Fiona took a breath. Hello? Her voice now was not as strong. The voice didn't ring at all before. Not one wrong number, nothing. She didn't like this. Hello, Fiona. Long time no speak. The sound of the voice made Fiona gasp. Simone! Ellen handed Ellen handled Arya, bringing her outside while Fiona caught up with Simone. That, she knew, was going to be a long catching up of events. So, making her way down the path, Ellen headed towards the river. Rounding the corner, she spotted Billy sitting on his usual rock, fishing pole in his hand. To what do I owe this lovely visit? He asked as they approached. Arya now reached for Billy, who grinned, taking her from Ellen's arms as he began patting her back. Simone finally called, so Fiona's having a much needed session. From what I recall, she's going to have to do some paperwork and assessments, so this will probably take a while, Ellen said, sitting down on the bank, watching as the water leisurely went by. But the murmur of the river, a soothing melody of nature. Time passed in the peaceful silence until Ellen spoke up once again. So, I need your help. With? We need to send a video to Marshall, she said, now looking to Billy, who turned his head to face her, looking curious. Oh, he crawled today, she said, watching as he grinned. No kidding, Marshall would love to see that. Now he looked down at Arya. Were you already trying to escape us? I bet you were, he said, tickling her cheek as he slid off the rock. Kneeling, he placed Arya on the grass. Go on, Munchkin, impress me. Ellen carried Arya back to the cabin. Ellen carried Arya back to the cabin, Billy behind her with another two large bass. As they walked into the cabin, she noticed the silence. She spotted Fiona in the living room, and placing Arya in the pack and play, she walked over. Leaning down, Ellen looked at Fiona. She had such a peculiar look on her face. Fiona's eyes met her, and although they weren't as entirely focused as they had been when they left, she was aware enough to look her in the eye now. Fiona, what's wrong? With trembling hands, Fiona handed Ellen her cell phone. I had to shut it off. It wouldn't stop ringing. But that voicemail. Now Fiona turned to look at Billy. You were right. It was a bad idea for Mom to come here, she said, pushing herself to her feet. Fiona walked from the room. Fiona walked from the room. She didn't want to hear it again. She couldn't hear it again. Why was Lich so messed up? That's a good question. Lifting Arya from the pen, she walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. Oh my God, Billy, listen. She could still hear it, that piercing scream. Turning, she spotted the closet door. Pulling it open. The room was full of hanging suits and jackets. Leaning over, Fiona grabbed the pillows and blankets, throwing them on the floor. Once inside, she pulled the door shut, settling on the floor. So look, I'm gonna level with you, Fiona said, propping her back with the pillows, settling Arya on her lap, the baby grabbing her thumb to steady herself. I don't know how things are gonna go down, and I'm scared of failing you, Fiona said, her hand caressing her daughter's cheek. I promise you, Arya, I promise you that I will do everything everything I can to keep you safe, she whispered. I promise. Marcelina and Ignitus. Ignitus was more than surprised to see Hudson at the house waiting for them. Marceline immediately walked up, hugging her father tightly. Daddy, they bugged our apartment, and Lich knows we're married, Marceline said, taking a shaking breath. You know you can stay here as long as you need, my little monster, he said, endearingly pinching her cheek as Marcy smiled. Ignitus, good to see you, Hudson said with a smile. Let me show you to your room, Hudson said, placing a hand on Ig's back, leading him down the hall. My room? I thought I was, he said, feeling as Hudson's hand tightened on his shoulder as he smiled at him. Not in my house. Daddy, Marceline said with her hands on her hips. Marceline, my house, my rules. My husband, my bedroom, none of your business. As the battle waged on between them, Ignitus stood off in the corner. An Aberdeen battle, he learned, was something to absolutely stay out of. He thought he and Ember were bad. Dropping his bag, he walked down the hall, entering the kitchen, finding Simon making some tea. Hey, Simon, how have you been? He asked with a smile. He liked Marceline's grandfather. I've been well. I haven't heard from Marshall lately. Is he well? He asked, motioning towards an empty mug, Ignitus politely declining. Yeah, Marshall's doing okay. He's still got some stuff going on, but you know Marshall, he'll figure it all out soon enough. But he sent us some pictures of the baby. Want to see? He asked, offering the phone to Simon, who smiled. Well, isn't she just a little cutie? Well, she's just a little cutie. Isn't she? Hey, let me grab your number. I'll give it to Marshall, he said, handing his phone to Simon as Marceline walked into the room. Hey, Grandpa. Hello, Marceline. How are you, sweetheart? I'm doing okay. How's your penguin at the zoo doing? She asked, listening as he went on. Hudson appeared at Ignitus' side again, leading him down the hall. Turning to look back at Marceline, he watched her wink as her father led him away. There will be rules while living under my roof. You will not disrespect my rules, will you, Ignitus? He asked, staring him down. Of course not. I appreciate your help with this, Ignitus said genuinely, watching as Hudson nodded. Respect my home, my daughter, and my rules, he said, leading him to a door and walking away. Ignitus was wondering what the rules were. Opening the door, he was surprised to see a familiar bedroom. Spotting Marceline's axe base on the wall, Ignitus smiled. Marcy, it seemed, had gotten her way. Dropping his bag next to the bed, Ignitus sat down. The bed was probably the squishiest bed he ever sat on. It was like a cloud. Laying back, he felt as it slowly engulfed him as he closed his eyes. Boo! Opening his eyes, he was face to face with Marceline, who smiled. Did you have a good nap? She asked as he grinned. The last thought I had was that this is probably the replica of Ariel's human bed in The Little Mermaid. Marceline laughed. The last thought I had was that this was probably the replica of Ariel's human bed in The Little Mermaid. Marceline laughed, leaning back as he scooted closer to her on the bed. It was the comfiest thing I could find. So, what are the rules? He asked. If I don't tell you, you can't break rules you don't know, she said, smirking. You look like you have rules you want to break, he said, now leaning back and smirking at her. Let me guess, Dad wants no hanky-panky, no rolling in the hay, no bumping uglies, no knocking boots, no feeding the kitty, no trips to Pound Town, no— How many euphemisms for sex do you know? Probably all of them? Now she laughed, and the sound made him smile, as he leaned over, watching her face flush. But your dad did say that above all else I must respect you, and if denying you anything is a disrespect, then we just cannot have that. I love how you found a loophole in half a second, she said, pulling Ignitus towards her, bringing her lips to his. Well, we're gonna have to have respect for Dad during daylight, he said, kissing up her jaw. But just so you know, my safe word is pineapple. Marceline couldn't help but burst out laughing at him. Go ahead and laugh, Marcy. I won't stop you from having your way with me come sundown, he said dramatically. You sound like those ladies on Lisa's novellas, Marceline said as she straddled him. We both know it's not going to go that way, but we'll see what happens tonight. I'm extremely open-minded. I'm sure whatever happens will be great. I just don't want your dad bursting in on us, he said, watching as Marceline smiled, as his hands rubbed along her thighs. Iggy, he's not gonna— Before she could even finish speaking, the door opened and Hudson walked in without knocking. Marceline, I have a question for you. As you can see, I'm completely clothed, Ignitus said, raising his hands in the air. Daddy, privacy! Marceline snapped, pointing towards the door, and Ignitus watched as Hudson pulled a complete 180, the door snapping shut behind him. I'm gonna go talk to him about boundaries, and what are we doing tonight, and what we're doing for dinner tonight, okay? Not a problem. I'm gonna imagine that I'm Ariel and enjoy the hell out of this bed. Ignitus said with a grin, watching Marceline walk from the room. Ash. Oh gosh, here we go. Are they gonna try and make us feel bad for him? Because I feel bad for his mom because she's sick, but I'm not gonna feel bad for the abusive boyfriend. How are you feeling, Ma? Ash asked, walking into the living room, watching as his mother looked sleepily up at him from the couch. I'm just a bit tired today, honey. I'll be fine. Dinner's in the oven at least. "How is work?" She asked, listening as Ash went on about his day at the construction site. He was exhausted and was pulling a double today, but Marshall wanted to come over and talk about something. A quick shower later and a kiss to his mom's cheek, after being sure she took her evening meds, and Ash was out the door heading back to work. He'd been pulling doubles for most of the last 2 weeks, and the looming thought of being late for rent was the only thing keeping him going. To be honest, he wanted nothing more than to fall asleep here and now, and he couldn't. But he couldn't. His mom was depending on him. Without his second job, they couldn't afford her prescriptions. He'd had only an hour of work left when his mom called him. "Honey, Marshall's here. I'm heading to bed, so he'll be in the living room, okay?" "Okay, Ma, that's no problem. Thank you for letting me know." "Good night, Ashton." "Night, Ma. I'll be home soon," he said, now dialing Marshall. "Yo! I'll be home around 12:15 or so. My shift ends at midnight." "That's no problem, dude. Your mom said Ashley moved out." "Yeah, she comes home once or twice a month, usually when she gets into a fight with her boyfriend. Thank God, no offense, but I don't want to be around her any more than I needed to be. Marshall, with how that relationship was, I don't blame you. All right, I've worked 12 hours today and I'm beat, so I'll be napping on the couch." "No problem. Make yourself at home. I'll be there in a little bit." Hanging up the phone, Ash sighed. This week was flying by, yet his time at work was seeming to drag. This felt like the longest Thursday on the planet. The rest of the hour crept by, and finally he was free. The ride home passed by in a blink, and like he told Marshall he would, Ash pulled in at 12:15 on the dot. Climbing the steps, he reached for the door the moment it slammed open. Marshall stormed out, looking apocalyptic in his rage. Ash stared in shock, following after him, wanting to say something, but before he could, Ashley stumbled out, howling with laughter. "Why are you so mad, Marshall? We were having such a good time." The speed in which he turned storming towards her startled Ash, but quickly he grabbed a hold of Marshall, feeling nothing but shock, as he lunged toward Ashley, barely missing her. "Ashley, I'm going to fucking end you, I swear to God!" Marshall snarled, Ash now holding him tighter, his sister still laughing. "Can somebody tell me what the hell happened?" "Somebody's mad," Ashley said with a slurring giggle, "'cause he can't keep it up." Ash could feel Marshall shaking in utter rage. He hadn't seen him this angry in a long time, and Ashley's next statement made Marshall snap, and Ash's eyes widen in shock at the implication. "We can finish up in my room. I won't tell Fiona if you don't. I'm gonna fucking kill you!" Ash could barely hold on, and dragged Marshall out of the driveway and down the street as best as he could. He needed details. Once they made it far enough away from the house, Ash felt it was safe to let Marshall go. He watched his friends storm through the empty lot, swearing up a storm as he did. Finally, Marshall sat on the curb with his head in his hands, Ash walking over, standing next to him. "Marsh, what was Ashley talking about?" "I woke up with her tongue down my throat and her hand in my pants, Ash. Fiona's not going to believe this. She's going to take Ari and fucking leave," he said miserably, his mind racing. "What the hell, what the hell, what the hell?" "Marshall, I don't think she'll. Fiona is not going to be happy when I tell her about this, Ash. It's not going to go well." Marshall said, his head between his knees. "Then don't tell her. It's not something you participated in." Marshall's silence spoke volumes. When he did speak, his voice was quiet. "I was dreaming about Fiona. So it wasn't intentional, but you did do something. Yeah. Does this count as cheating?" he asked, looking up at Ash, who shrugged, looking unsure. "If this happened to Fiona, would you count it as cheating?" Ash asked, watching as Marshall shook his head. "Of course not." "Well, there you go. You didn't cheat." "Yeah, in my own opinion," Marshall said, the sarcasm more than obvious. "Look, Fiona will get mad at Ashley, not at you. What's the fuss?" he asked as Marshall groaned loudly. "I cannot believe that dumpster fire did this to me." Now he cut Marshall a look. Hot mess or not, Ashley was still his sister. "Watch it, Marsh. She's a dumpster fire, but she's my dumpster fire," Ash said with an edge to his voice. "Besides, what can you do? It's not like you can go to the cops," he said with a shrug. "They wouldn't take a thing you said seriously," he said, watching as Marshall's face whipped up to look at him. "I was asleep," he said, sounding furious. Now Ash sighed. "Yeah, Marsh, I know you were, but you were also sleeping in your ex's mom's house. How's that gonna look? Besides, you're a guy. It's not like she hurt you." Now Marshall closed his eyes, looking away from him. Oh my God, that's so screwed up. "It's not like she hurt you. You're a guy. It's not like she hurt you." I hate that. I hate when people are like, "Oh, you're a guy. It's not like you can be raped." I remember the days where you actually said something when you saw something messed up, or at least supported me when I tried sorting through this bullshit in my head, Marshall said, rubbing his temples. I'm out of here. Pushing himself to his feet, Marshall dug in his pocket. Pulling the envelope out, he threw it at Ash, who caught it in surprise against his chest. He watched as Marshall left, walking down the street to his car, not once looking back. Looking in the envelope, Ash felt his heart drop. There was money in there, a lot of money. Walking over to his car, Ash popped the trunk, lifting the spare tire from the wheel well and placing the envelope underneath it. Ash sighed, knowing he would have to deal with Ashley. Taking a breath, Ash turned, heading back into the house. He found Ashley flipping through the channels, lounging on the couch. Walking over, he stood in front of the TV. Seriously, I have no sympathy for this guy anymore. So, you want to tell me what bullshit you threw at me? What the hell was that with Marshall? Ashley started laughing again and reaching behind him. Ash switched off the TV, tired of all the unnecessary noise. Why did you do that to him? Jeez, Ash, you act like I assaulted him. You did. You really, really did. If the situation was reversed and that was you, Ashley, I'd kill the guy who did that to you, he said, now feeling a pang of guilt as his thoughts drifted to several moments in his relationship with Marceline. This was the pot calling the kettle black, and he knew it. Look, Ash, you know it's not the same, okay? All guys want is sex anyways. What guy doesn't dream of waking up to some shit like that? She asked now, walking from the living room, Ash following behind. One who's engaged with a freaking baby. Why the hell did you do it? Oh my god, she said, sounding annoyed. I got into a fight with my boyfriend. What better way to get back at him than to screw my ex? I mean, come on, we have a history. Besides, Marshall was sleeping on our couch. That's the universal sign for kicked out of the house. Or it could be the universal signal of sleeping. For real, have you no shame? Do you feel zero guilt for being this way? For any of the shit you've done to him? Ash stared at his sister as she gave him a level look. Nope, none. Why? Why should I? I'm looking out for me and my interests. Why should I feel any guilt? Because you're a horrible person and cruel to other people, he asked, though it didn't seem to faze her. Yeah, I am, but I'm fine with it, she said with a shrug, now boiling a pot of water and pulling a pack of instant noodles from the cabinet. How can you be, though? Ashton, I just don't care. I don't care. I don't care about Marshall's feelings. I don't care about his kid. The only thing I cared about was using him to make my situation better for me. I mean, sure, my plan didn't go how I hoped it would, but that's just life, she said with a shrug, Ash staring at her in disgust. Well, at least she admits it. What the hell did you hope would happen? He asked, feeling more than apprehensive. Well, your guys' band has been really taking off, and with all the repairs and improvements around here, I know you guys are raking it in. The realization hit Ash like a truck. She was not this messed up, was she? Were you really gonna try and knock yourself up with Marshall's kid? He asked, feeling more than disturbed by the thought while Ashley nodded. Bingo! I mean, why not? He's a looker, he's definitely got cash. Are you fucking psychotic? I realize we're both messed up because of how we grew up, but this is excessive, Ashley, even for you. Turning, he walked from the room, shaking his head. What the hell was wrong with her? What the hell was wrong with her? In his room, he pulled out his phone, finding the number and dialing it. The phone rang twice before the line picked up. Ashton. Ashton? Call and check on Marshall. What happened? My sister's a basket case. Just call Marshall now, Ash said, hanging up. Tonight could not get any worse. I have no idea who he called, so I didn't know which voice to do, so. He was still mad, and now on top of everything else, how would he tell Fiona about this? He couldn't just not tell her like Ash had suggested, then she would wonder why he'd hid it. But if Fiona asked, he'd have to tell her that he'd kissed Ashley. Fiona would understand that it wasn't his fault, right? He'd been sitting at the kitchen table thinking about everything. The moment he felt hands on his shoulders, he jumped from the chair, spinning around to see his mother standing there in shock. Marshall, sweetie, are you okay? I'm fine. I just need a shower, he said, running his fingers through his hair. Now Hannah reached for him as he stepped back. Marshall, what? The sound of his cell phone caught both their attention. I should get that, he said, ducking away from her. Grabbing his phone, he walked into the bathroom, locking the door behind him. Answering the call, he leaned against the wall, bringing the phone to his ear. Yeah? What's wrong? It was almost a relief to hear Ignitus's voice. I thought twin telepathy was a you and M thing, Ig, Marshall said with a dry laugh. What can I say, Marsh? My telepathic powers pick up Marshall misery. What's up, dude? FP asked, listening as Marshall sighed. You cannot laugh at me. You cannot make fun of me about this later. I'm serious. Hearing this, Ignitus spoke up. I can tell it's serious, Marshall, but hit me, dude. What's going on? Do you need my help for anything? I dropped the rent money off to Ash. Marshall started. He could do this. Okay, then what? Ash wasn't there, so I waited for him. Ignitus sighed. Gross. I'd rather set the entire stage up by myself than spend that much time with my ex. Even though he couldn't see him, Marshall shook his head. She wasn't supposed to be there. She moved out. Dude, I need to bathe. I feel gross right now. He could tell Ignitus. He knew he'd be able to tell Ignitus. But what happened? Ig, it's embarrassing. Look, I've already promised not to make fun of you and not to laugh. It's gotta be bad, Marsh, so what's up? Ashley. Marshall paused, looking at the phone and sighed. Ugh, we just got into it. She got under my skin again. Same shit, different day. With the extra stress of things, I just snapped. Marshall said, now staring at the floor. Well, I can't lie, Marsh. I'm relieved it wasn't something worse. It's not like we could really deal with any extra crap at the moment. Yeah, for real. But yeah, nothing major. I'm gonna let you go. I want a shower. Later. Without waiting for a response, Marshall hung up the phone. The sooner he showered, the better. Marshall just wanted this screwed up week to be over. Okay, well, that's it for the chapter, and I think I'm just gonna upload one chapter for now because it's really late. It's 9:35, and I don't want to record another chapter, but I want to upload this. I really want to upload this chapter tonight, so I'm gonna just upload that, and I'm just gonna upload this chapter, and then I'll do one or two chapters at a later date when I'm able to record some more again. For now, I love each and every one of you guys. Please don't forget to always be yourself. You're valid. Please don't forget to be good to yourself and to others, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye.